Welcome back, and joining me with more insight on the day's trade is Antonio Senatore from Cartesian Capital. Antonio, thanks so much for your time this evening. Now, markets taking a bit of a breather, trade pretty mixed, really choppy. We've seen red screens over in Europe, some gains filtering through to the US, and really markets in the red here at home with the exception of the industrial 25, and we all know that is because of Tencent's results. We'll get into that soon. But I want to talk about the JSE's resilience. It's still trading above that 92,000 mark. The Rand also holding up really well. What have you made of trade here at home? You know, the odds seem to be against us, but we are quite resilient.
Yeah, so the JSE All Shares still at all-time highs on the back of, a big part of that was driven by the gold price on the back of uncertainty around Trump's trade negotiations. The market at the moment is a bit directionless today, waiting on new news because there hasn't been any material news items on the tariff front today. They obviously had a very strong rally on the back of the Chinese tariff talks, but the market at the moment is very news-driven. The Rand, the Rand could be supported by equity valuations that look relatively attractive. And then from a GNU perspective, it seems more stable from a while back when there was a bit of fallout happening with regard to the VAT situation. And it seems like that has settled now. So there's more comfort that the GNU is likely to function and hold together. In the US...
Yes, you can continue.
Just quickly on the US, we have seen a surge in the tech stocks, and that has really erased the year's earlier market losses on the S&P 500. So chip makers led those gains, with NVIDIA and AMD rallying after the news that they would supply semiconductors to Saudi Arabia's one of their state-backed companies for a large-scale data center project. So that's what's driven the US markets at the moment, but they are quite flat today.
Yeah, and let's get into, some of that trade truce that has fizzled out, right? So we've seen those talks taking place over the weekend, really boosting sentiment coming into the week. But that, yes, fizzling out, as we do know that there are deals that have been signed, but nothing is really set in stone, nothing really sentiment. And what I found interesting is that, some investment banks have moved to update their forecast on China's economy. I think JP Morgan was one of them. Some other banks have also somewhat erased their bets for a US recession. Isn't this a bit too soon?
I do think it's a bit too soon. The next 3 months, we really need to watch what happens in those negotiations between the US and their trading partners in the next 3 months. But JP Morgan, I saw today, has already boosted its forecast for US economic growth after the Chinese-US tariff agreement and the dialing down of tariffs on both of those parties. So they're saying that will reduce the chance of a recession in the USA this year. They're now predicting a lower than 50% chance of a recession this year, and they see US GDP growing at 0.6% in 2025 from 0.2% previously. So it is quite an improvement. But as I said, it will largely depend on the tariff negotiations over the next 3 months with the trading partners. And the new tariff on China of 30%, I think, will probably remain around that. Trump at the end of the day doesn't want a recession. So invariably, for the benefit of both economies, they'll have to get around the table and come to some kind of agreement on what that final tariff will be. And it probably won't be too different to what it is now.
All right, let's move over to some company news. Novo Nordisk has struck a deal with a US firm, this all in an effort to develop an oral weight loss pill. Just your analysis on that deal. It does seem like Eli Lilly has had a head start with its oral pill really being successful in its trial. I think it was the 4th phase that took place about a month ago.
Yeah, it's a $2.2 billion deal, so quite big, with US biotech company Septerna to develop this pill. And it's part of Novo's big push to stay ahead of the fast-growing weight loss market, especially, as you said, their rival Eli Lilly has gained so much market share with its drug Zepbound. So this deal effectively addresses investor concerns that Novo's first-to-market drug is losing market share to Eli Lilly's offering. And there's a lot of activity actually happening in the obesity space. So it's the second significant pharma deal in obesity management recently. In March, Roche paid $5.3 billion to co-develop and co-commercialize Zealand Pharma's obesity drug. So a lot of activity in this space.
It's been really interesting to see, all these pharmaceutical companies trying to get a piece of the weight loss pie. We have seen in both Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly's results that they are really, cashing it with those products that they do sell. Let's move over to Burberry. They were out with numbers earlier today. Profits took a knock, sales also down, and they're planning to cut jobs. But the share price soared today. Am I missing anything?
So I think investors were expecting it to be worse than what it was. So revenue, it came in a bit better than expected, as well as earnings. But it's been a very difficult economic environment for a lot of these luxury brand companies, and Burberry has lost some brand appeal. So that's resulted in them recording an operating loss of £3 million for the year, compared to a £418 million profit in the previous year. So that's not good at all. And as a result, they're currently going through a turnaround plan, which I think investors are finding comfort in, to boost sales and cut costs, as the global luxury sector has been struggling with global consumer demand, especially out of China. And the strategy is already starting to bear some fruit. And the company does look to return to profitability over the course of the following year. But they have to recreate the brand. They lost some brand value. They've lost market share. And there are a number of actions that they are taking to reset the brand. They're creating products that are more relevant. Burberry has historically been a winter brand, so they're trying to create products that are more relevant. They've launched their Winter 2025 runway show. And they say they're making their merchandise more visual in their stores. And as you said, they're cutting 18% of its workforce to cut costs. One more thing on this is that the US market, I mentioned China, but the US market going forward might also be a problem. US accounts for 19% of the Burberry business. So a worsening outlook for the American consumer could pose a challenge to the company.
And Antonio, just quickly before we get to your stock pick, Tencent out with results today, really upbeat and boosting local markets as well. We saw the Industrial 25 ending in the green, the only index ending in the green on the JSE today. And that, of course, as those Tencent numbers benefited both Prosus and Naspers. What have you made of those numbers?
Yeah, so gaming has been the cornerstone of Tencent's offering. Regulations have eased on that side in China. They've been known to continuously compound on their gaming offering. So in other words, offering new games, updates, the ability, and they've got the ability to monetize that business. And so they've been exceptionally successful in that space. And obviously the Chinese market is a huge market, and a lot depends on how you launch new games and how they're accepted by the public. And obviously, that will be beneficial to Naspers and Prosus, because that's a major investment of both companies, and any price appreciation in Tencent would lead to price appreciation in Naspers or Prosus, even though those companies trade at discounts to their NAV.
All right, before I let you go, where are you seeing opportunity today? What's your stock pick?
My stock pick today is Bytes Technology Group. So the company was spun out of Altron Group and is listed on the JSE and London Stock Exchange. It reported results yesterday with headline earnings up by 16.5% in sterling. So it's also a rand hedge. The growth reflects strong cash flows on the back of strong demand for its distribution of software and services. As a result, a special dividend was declared. The full year ordinary dividend up by 15% to 10 pence, and the special dividend as well of 10 pence. And the results just show continued supports for its comprehensive suite of software and services, and the company continues to expand in both the public and corporate sectors. And as part of that, the company has increased its geographic presence in the UK. And then lastly, just the drivers for future growth will obviously be cloud computing, AI, cybersecurity. And they've got a robust balance sheet with cash on hand of about 113 million sterling.
All right, Antonio, thanks so much for your time and sharing your insights on the day's trade. That was Antonio Senatore from Cartesian Capital.